Welcome to Decisions That Count, the podcast where we explore the fascinating world of decision making, cognitive performance, and how to unlock your full potential.
That's right. We're here to dive deep into the science of the brain, revealing how to master our mental energy, overcome decision fatigue, and achieve peak performance in every aspect of our lives. So whether you're a gamer, an entrepreneur, an athlete, or just someone striving to have a sharper, more clear mind, this podcast's for you.
And today we have a truly inspiring guest who embodies the incredible power of routine and goal setting. He's an accomplished lawyer, a dedicated philanthropist, and a man on a mission to conquer an extraordinary physical challenge.
This guy's taken on a remarkable feat of endurance, walking and sometimes running hundreds of kilometers around one of Singapore's most beautiful nature reserves, and in the name of a cause that's very close to his heart.
He's known for his sharp wit, his ridiculous ability to memorize data and numbers, and his unwavering commitment to making a difference in the world. Please now welcome the incredible Tom Platts.
Thank you, guys. What an introduction. I hope I do it justice.
Well, Tom, we're so excited to have you here today. I think this is going to be a podcast where we do a lot of listening because you have a great story to share with us and a great cause. So really looking forward to diving into everything you're doing from the dementia standpoint, which we'll talk about, to your career, kind of the decisions that brought you to where you are today.
Yeah, me too. I'm really looking forward to it. So thanks for inviting me on.
Yeah, great. So maybe let's start with the MacRitchie challenge,
Yeah.
and the decisions that led you to start walking.
So it's a long story. So as you said earlier, you could listen to me for a long time.
Please do.
I'll try to keep it short. When I talk to people, when I go around MacRitchie Reservoir, I have a bit of a chat with them. I've got a story that I've told now. It's developed over the last 733 loops that I've done of MacRitchie Reservoir, or doing the MacRitchie Challenge, which we'll come to. Basically, the whole thing started back in January 2023 and was the culmination of a pretty difficult year that I had in 2022. My family, who'd lived with me in Singapore for 10 years, moved back to the UK for various reasons. So I missed my children, I missed family life. I also broke my shoulder. I was explaining to Michelle earlier today that I did it skateboarding, which at 42 years old is more embarrassing than anything else, but it did hurt. And you forget how important your shoulder is in order to be able to sort of live your life generally, both exercise, sleeping, all of those sorts of things. It's blooming painful. And so I sort of let myself go a bit. I was not as good a friend as I was to other people previously. I felt a bit sad. I was a bit lonely, if we're being honest. So come the end of 2022, I thought, look, I've got to try to do something to get myself out of this rut. In my extended family, we have a couple of cases of dementia, and I know that's a matter that's very sort of close to both of your hearts as well. And I happened to see one of the people who has it towards the end of the year at Christmas time, and it was really stark. The decline had been great. I knew nothing about dementia at that time, but I was pretty shocked by what I saw. So I got back to Singapore thinking, right, new year, new me, new resolutions, January 23. And typically, as a lawyer, I got a phone call in the back of a taxi from a client within 20 minutes of getting off the plane, classic Changi, you can get through the airport, no problem at all, to say, hi, can we have a chat about a deal we were talking about last year? And I said, yeah. He said, let's go and have a beer. Oh, here we go. New year, no drinking, I do drink, but not lots, but I thought I'd do a dry January. So none of that sort of stuff, and really try to set a new marker for this year going forward. But I said, of course, I'm the advisor. I said, yes, let's do it. Let's go for a beer. And then I kicked myself. I said, why am I doing that? It's ridiculous. Within 20 minutes of being in Singapore, within 20 minutes of trying to start a new sort of conviction towards a positive outlook on life for 2023, I'd already failed. So I rang him back and said, listen, let's not do that. Let's go and do some exercise. And I'd only really done MacRitchie Reservoir a couple of times in the years, in the 13 years that I'd lived, at that stage, 10 years I'd lived in Singapore before. But I said, let's go to MacRitchie Reservoir and do some exercise. And he said, oh, good idea, let's do that. I then rang him back and he said, you're not busy, are you? I said, well, no, not really. I said, I've had another idea. You were going to buy me beers. I didn't say that obviously it would have been me that would have bought him the beers. And I also didn't say that because I was on dry January, I would be drinking Coke as well, Diet Coke or something. So I said to him, what I'm going to ask you though, Mike, is to pay me an amount of money equivalent to the amount that you think that you would have spent on beer. I don't know how long the chat was going to be because you asked me. And I'll give it to my firm's charity of the year in Singapore. And he said, God, you're nuts, but that sounds great. Good idea. So we went out, we did a really lovely loop of MacRitchie Reservoir on January the 7th, 2023. He said, could I do it again? We saw 2 snakes. Wonderful. He said, could I do it again? I said, yeah. So the seed was grown. And since then, it hasn't stopped. And so there have been very few days that I've not done it. But basically, every day since January the 7th, give or take, I've done a loop of MacRitchie Reservoir or equivalent in New York, Paris or London, and in the capital, London, both Richmond Park and the city, equivalent to 12 kilometres, either walking or running. And I've taken so far with me now 1,233 people from 47 different countries with it. And it's all in sort of, there are various different reasons for it. There are various different things that have come about as a result of it. But the short answer is it's in order to raise funds and awareness for Dementia Singapore and the work that they do here in Singapore.
So that's 733 loops, is that?
Yes, so I call a loop. So obviously the loop of MacRitchie Reservoir, there are 2 different lengths. You guys both know it. It's, for those of you who don't know Singapore, it's in the centre of Singapore, and it's part of the central catchment area of Singapore. It's right in the middle of the jungle. You see all sorts of animals, which I'm sure we'll talk about because I record all of that wildlife data for the authorities here in Singapore. And so 733 loops of either MacRitchie or the different places I've done it, which all account up to between 11 and 12 kilometres. So that's just under 9,500 kilometres and about 12.5 million steps.
12.5 million. Incredible. The
stats, I do have a lot of stats.
Yeah. Michelle mentioned you like numbers.
I was fascinated when I did the walk. I was like, it just the reeling off the numbers of like how many monkeys, how many.
Well, the other thing I think you know is that it's getting a bit more technical now because I've had to and I've got a website and an app that's being developed and that sort of stuff. But prior to that, I've just been doing it all through WhatsApp and through 3 spreadsheets that I run, which have got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And all of this was completely organic, but the only way that I can control what I'm doing basically is to set up WhatsApp groups so that I know what day I'm doing what. So even if I'm doing one with you, I would still say, even though we're friends on WhatsApp, I'd still set up a group which is just you and me saying called MacRitchie Challenge. So it's extraordinary. I've got about 800 different WhatsApp groups, which are still live, called MacRitchie Challenge something or other.
I'd like to talk a little bit about the sequence of the decisions that have led to this point.
Yeah.
Because there was that kind of initial decision coming into 2023 where you were like, I need to make some changes.
Yeah.
But after that first session, where you did your first loop, what was the decision to do it again? You know, because that would have been a really nice morning, had a great meeting, got to know someone, and that was lovely.
Yep.
What happened? What was the trigger to go, okay, I'm not only going to do this again, I'm going to do this 732 times and keep it going?
I mean, the basic is I really enjoyed it. I've always loved being in the countryside. My friends laugh at me when I'm saying I'm a boy from the country in the UK because I'm actually from Croydon. But I've also spent a lot of my life up in the Lake District in the UK, which is beautiful. So to get out, get into the countryside, or the nature here, the jungle, hear the jungle noises, see the wildlife, just gives you a different environment from the work and what we do on our daily basis. So sitting in Marina Bay, looking at documents, looking at the computer. And it wasn't a difficult decision to take, actually. What was difficult was the fact that I thought, what am I doing and how long am I going to do this for? And do I have to get up every morning at 4 o'clock in the morning to do it? And because that's the way it sort of carried on. It ended up me starting at 4:15 every morning for the first 3 weeks. It just sort of grew and grew. And the more I talked to people about it, people said, oh, that sounds good fun. Let's go and do it. Always with a sort of pretense that we may well see a snake or something exciting. We don't see them all the time, but I have seen a lot of them. But it just developed naturally, really, is the answer. And it's just fun. I mean, that really is ultimately it. If you go in there with a positive mental attitude, a fun sense of humour, you're going to have a good fun. You're going to have a good time there. And we chat, we meet new people, lots of different groups of people. I try to put groups of individuals who I think may be interesting together and develop that. And all of these WhatsApp groups I talked about, they're all still live. Everybody's still talking. I'm the only common denominator, so I keep getting hundreds of text messages all on these different groups. Yeah. But it's lovely, and it really has developed over time into something that I could never have imagined it to have.
There's got to be some mornings
that
you just wake up and go, oh God, like,
Yeah.
I don't want to go. It's wet. It's cold.
It's more challenge than fun.
There's lightning.
Do you know what?
You know.
Of course, there are occasions, but the routine that this has given me, and this is one of the things I think we'll explore later, the routine that this has given me makes it actually really enjoyable. I know that every night when I come home from work, I will set up my kit for the next day. I know that my alarm will ring at 5:35 in the morning. I'm fortunate I've got a car in Singapore, so I can drive to where we go. The loop is good because it is a loop you start and finish at the same place. But just meeting new people. And I said to Michelle earlier today, I had another 3 new people write to me. Every day I'm getting 4 or 5 new people come to me to ask to do it from all around the world. They're coming into town, can we do it? I have people from Jersey writing to me coming in next week, can they come and do it? I have France people, all the time. So it can get a bit like, do I have to do it again? And actually seeing MacRitchie as much as I do, I literally know every part of it very, very well, including off-piece, but don't say that publicly because I'll get in trouble for that.
This is a podcast.
Yeah. But it can be.
Yeah.
But even in the rain, it's fun. It's just a different environment. Every day, MacRitchie Reservoir looks completely different from the day before. Mm-hmm. There might be mist coming off the water. There might be a ripple in the water because of something. There may be the sunrise. The sunrise occurs in MacRitchie Reservoir every day between 6:56 and 7:01 every day. So I know, because of what time we start and the pace that we tend to go at, depending on the number of people we have, I know where we'll be when the sun rises. It's amazing. Like, it's just extraordinary. But it's wonderful. So there have been some days that I don't feel too good about going. Today, because we've been quite busy this morning, Michelle and I haven't done it this morning, but I'm going to go and do it this evening instead. So it'll be fun.
There's a bit of flexibility in it.
There can be. There can be. There has to be. I actually do have a job as well.
Yeah.
We'll get there.
Yeah.
No, I think that's great. I think, well, Tom, one of the reasons we're trying to do this podcast is make people think more about their decisions. Because just in life right now and society and the demands, we're just making so many decisions, and we can suffer from decision fatigue.
Yeah.
But I love your story just because it really shows people how everything can change by a single decision.
Yeah.
And so often we're just caught in routine habit or what's comfortable or easy. Going for a beer, right?
Yeah.
It's just a comfortable, easy decision to make. But just making a clear, purposeful decision can change everything.
Yeah.
And here we are, 2 years later or whatnot, and it's remarkable what's happened from a single decision.
It's the 2-year anniversary tomorrow. So, the 2-year anniversary
There we
party
go.
up there next week. Actually, the 2-year anniversary a couple of weeks ago. But yeah, absolutely true. And I'm very proud of that decision because, again, I think Michelle and I talked about this when we walked around MacRitchie before. I think at the time when I was having a pretty tough old time, I could have gone one of 2 ways. And one way could have been to have spent most of my time down the pub when I'm not at work. Or the other could have been to do something a bit more worthwhile for myself physically, mentally, and for other people. Because I know a lot of people have got a lot out of this as well. The community that this has built has been phenomenal. I'm the main beneficiary of it, but at the same time, I love the fact that so many people are talking. Now, I would say probably for 2 months of the beginning, I probably did spend too much time down the pub because I was thinking, I've got nothing else to do, I might as well just go there and see friends. But after that 2 months, I actively took a decision to do something about it. And what's happened's happened.
It's not just that one decision. So there was a big decision made at the beginning, but there's a decision every day that's made to keep going. And I'm sure that decision's got easier over time because you've created a new habit.
Yeah.
You've created a new routine. Am I right in saying that, Shawn?
Yeah, I think so for sure. Once you take off that initial decision load at the beginning, and we all know this when we try to New Year, start going to the gym and all those things, right? Everybody struggled with that. So once you get this habit, formed, then it does become much, much easier.
It's the routine. I know what I'll be doing. I know that if I go out in the evening the night before with work or whatever it might be, I've got to just make sure that I'm awake and raring to go at 5:35. Because also I owe it to other people because it's not just about me now. The biggest group I've taken is at the moment 67. I think on Monday I've got a big event going up down there at 6:30 in the morning, and we're taking about 75 at the moment. So that group's growing. So I owe it to them as well to make sure that I'm on decent form. And I turn up on time, so I'm always there 15, 20 minutes earlier than anybody else. So everything's set up and prepared. So it's an obligation that I've put on myself, but I love it as well because it gives me that routine which perhaps I didn't have or I could have lost.
Yeah, and it gives you the tribe
Yep.
to kind of hold you accountable and encourage you.
Exactly.
And again, we've probably experienced everybody at the gym. It's, if you start to make friends there and expectations to show up, then it just encourages you along the way.
And, as this has got more, people have got to know about it more, and more people have heard about it. You mentioned that you'd heard from Scott about this previously, and a mutual friend of ours. It's rare now that people don't say, "Oh, are you the MacRitchie guy?" I mean, it's extraordinary. I've had some amazing stories. I spent a lot of time last year with my daughter in hospital. She hasn't been very well, and in the UK. And so I was doing it in London when I was there. I won't go into too much more detail, but I was in the ward one morning cleaning my teeth because I'd stayed over next to her. And a guy came up. I knew that we were going to be there for a while, so I sort of identified somebody who I thought might be somebody that I could have a coffee with. And I hadn't actually gone to speak to him, but I walked out of the place where I was washing my teeth, cleaning my teeth, and I was wearing a MacRitchie. I'm all about the merch, by the way, as you can see from my hat. So there are hat laws and all sorts of other stuff. But I was wearing my hoodie. It was cold. And he came up to me and tapped, this same guy who I'd sort of thought, I might catch up with him for a coffee if I can, because it's better than just sitting by the hospital bed the whole time. He came up and tapped me on the shoulder and he said, are you that MacRitchie Tom guy? This is in the middle of Tooting, St George's Hospital in Tooting. I said, my name's Tom and I know MacRitchie quite well. And he'd seen all about it on social media, and we have obviously got mutual friends, and it was brilliant because it gave us the opportunity to have a good chat about something. Quite extraordinary, 13,000 kilometres away.
I actually just want to come back to the habit part of this as well, because obviously the first decision's hard to make, but you've put a couple of mechanisms in place to make subsequent decisions easier. So by when you look at the kind of cue, habit, reward, you've got, this is just such a great example of that. Like, you've got your cue, which is your laying your stuff out the night before. Yep. You've got your WhatsApp groups, your accountability. So you've made a commitment to other people. So you're kind of setting that up. So you're making that part easy. The habit obviously is kind of going and doing the loop. The loop stays the same every time. Yep. And the rewards element's really layered, because like you just said, it's a different walk every time. Like, you see all these incredible animals. You're getting immediate rewards when you're doing it. You're connecting with new people, you're learning about new people, you're having a really amazing experience. And then afterwards you're getting kind of the endorphins and you're feeling good mentally and physically afterwards. And I'm sure performing better at work as well. You've spent 2 hours in the morning off your phone in nature, connecting with people, and by doing all of these things, it's making you've formed a habit over time. Absolutely.
And so many of the things you've just said there, I also talk to people about when I'm in the reservoir or wherever we're doing it. But the ability to say, I've done 20,000 steps, I'm in the office by 9:15, which is before. We're all lawyers. We get into the office late because we work late, or maybe we're lazy. We just don't get to the office at all.
Different podcast.
Yeah, exactly. But I'll have done 20,000 steps. I'll be in the office usually before most people. We're fortunate we've got a shower in the office, so I get everything sorted, go up and do it. But you're absolutely right, and you feel good about the fact that you've done this exercise. You go in, probably want a cup of coffee, piece of toast, or whatever it might be, and you just feel like you've done something worthwhile with the beginning of your day. It is a slog to get up every day at 5:35, but then it's not, because I do enjoy it so much. It's the only time of the day, I was mentioning this earlier, the only time of the day when for a solid 2 hours, 2 hours 30, I don't have any access to my phone. The only time I do is to take photographs of the wildlife that I see. So it's a great opportunity. So then I get back to my phone and sit in the car, do all the things I need to do to close the loop off for the day. So I send people their official photo, I send them the Just Giving link if they want to, they don't have to sponsor, and then they get bits and pieces of information and whatsoever. And once that's done, we're back into the day. But it's the only time during the day that I don't really have access to the phone at all.
And let's talk about your day. So you are a lawyer.
I am, yeah.
So let's talk about what a day looks like and the difficult decisions that you might have to make in your profession.
Well, so I'm a transactional lawyer. I said to you earlier, I do sort of M&A. I've been doing it now for 20 odd years. And over the years, I've moved up in terms of seniority and management, both in terms of the deals that we do, but managing the team and getting more grey hair than I should, and I'm sad to have. But every day you have to make decisions, whether that be on document drafting, on negotiation, just in the job itself, or if it's management of people and difficult decisions about having to, let people go, bring people in, keep people happy, pacify people, deal with management, all those sorts of things that we all have to do in our daily sort of world. But I do have a lot of decisions I have to make. So having that 2 hours in advance does give you more time to be able to think about what decisions you're going to be able to make. I'm a thinker. I think a lot about things, always. So going out and having that 2 hours, usually I'm do it with people, but having it on my own sometimes is really great, because you can just think about what you need to do to get to where you want. You don't always make the right decision, but it's an important part of my day.
That's really interesting. So you sometimes use a time on your walk to kind of plan the decisions you have to make that day.
Very much. Yesterday alone I was doing it. I did a loop on my own yesterday because I just thought I'd do it myself. Yeah. And I spent all of that walk at 6 o'clock in the morning thinking about what I had to do that day and some of the discussions I had to have.
Right. Fantastic. Because when we talk about decision fatigue, which you've heard a lot about maybe before this, one of the great strategies that we talk to people about, and Michelle's a big proponent, is a decision list. So actually planning your day from the important decisions that you kind of have to make. Yep. Maybe, Tom, with that, because we have a high-powered lawyer who's not charging us. So I'm going to ask you.
Don't go too overboard. Drop the adjectives and superlatives.
But what do you see decision fatigue in your job? So decision fatigue is this declining quality of our decisions, and you see it in the clients you work with, because M&A, these are stressful events, right? There's a lot of emotions both ways for it. So what do you, how do you see decision fatigue in your career?
A lot. So one of the things I do a lot of cross-border work. So people from the US, from Canada, where you're from, the UK, Europe, Australia, wherever, to time zones makes a difference. So, but it means that we're always the ones who have to deal with time zone issues. So a lot of calls at 11, 12 o'clock at night and all that sort of stuff. And I can see it in my team when we're on calls together that they get tired. We get tired. You can't make mistakes. Well, one does, and if you do, you have to live up to it and work it out. But you see it all the time. People get tired. They make emotional decisions rather than ones which have been well reasoned. They make decisions that, if they'd had just a little bit extra time to think about it, rather than firing off an email because they need to get a deal done or a client's pressing them to do something now, if they'd stopped, thought about it, held it, spoken to somebody, had a coffee, had lunch or something, and then dealt with it, they make a better decision. And I personally regularly send emails where I think if I'd left that for 10 minutes, I might have had a different tone to it, or it may have come out slightly different. But that's what this walk does for me. It does give me the ability to just stop and think, do I need to send that now, or do I think, could it be done a different way? And I see it all the time in everybody.
That's fantastic. You more elegantly describe decision fatigue there. Sometimes I struggle with. So that impulsive decision making, emotional decision making, the not being as confident as the decisions that you're making. So it's really interesting.
But you're expected, of course, by your clients to be on it 24/7.
Yeah.
Particularly if I'm talking to someone in New York or, God forbid, the West Coast, where the time zone is even worse. They expect you to be there to be able to help them through, or whatever it may be, and it's sometimes quite complicated.
Yeah, and that late at night, especially in your position, you certainly have decision fatigue at that point.
For sure. And then it's obviously with the management piece and seeing, my teammates who are more junior and learning on the job as well at the same time, it can get quite trying for them. And that's when you have to step up and say, okay, this is what we'll deal with it, to how we sort it. And you say to the client, pause, we'll get back to you, but we'll do it in our own time. But it's you see it a lot.
But those 2 hours of internal reflection off your phone, you found that to be a big benefit for this type of condition throughout the day.
Yeah, because I sort of know where I can, now that I'm a bit more senior and a bit more grey-haired, let's say.
Wise,
good answer. Yeah, okay. I can work out what my day is likely to look like, and it's always a criticism of junior lawyers or young lawyers is, I just don't know where the next work's going to be, what it's going to be. I don't know if I'm going to have to drop everything to do this. I've got another partner saying they want me to do this. My senior associate's telling me they need this. It's not just about law. It could be any business, but I don't know quite where it's all coming from. So that 2 hours for me in the morning lets me think, okay, as well as being able to just know roughly what my day is, it gives me, okay, I need to focus a little bit more on that bit today. That bit on that deal, I think we can let go for a day and a half or so, and we can think about that later. I know that somebody else is in charge of that bit. I trust those guys. That's good. So that's all right. And you can sort of just work out what the things are which need to be focused on now and when they need to be done.
Shawn, I'd like to understand a little bit about the science, about kind of the physiology, about what's going on physically, as decision fatigue takes hold as the day goes on, and why what Tom's doing is working so well is such an incredible thing to prevent or curb the effects of decision fatigue.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I mean, honestly, we've talked to hundreds, maybe thousands of people now about decision fatigue, like at large over the past number of years. And I'm always amazed at how people describe it, because it's a little bit different, but it always comes back to these core issues that you so smartly put. I think those 2 hours in the morning without your phone, right? I'll highlight that again. So you're not actually making decisions, right? You're actually just internally reflecting on the day ahead. And if I read you right, you're actually kind of strategically planning the decisions that you have to make. And I think, so those 2 hours are, back to your, Michelle, your decision list, right? It's prioritizing it such that the highest quality decisions are made when you're most able to make them. So first you rank your decisions, right? And then you make sure that you deal with those big decisions first. So strategically, from like just a planning perspective, it's incredibly smart. And I'll highlight again, if decision fatigue is what we think it is, and all the evidence is pointing to this, it's a physiological limitation of our brain. Our brain just can't make any more decisions, or the quality begins to decline. Something has to be sacrificed, right? So this is actually a hard limitation of our brain that we can't avoid through psychology or things like that, but we can do strategic planning like Tom is doing to try to make sure that we're optimizing our decision making.
Yeah, and this is physiological, right? So
absolutely. I'm just like, your muscles can only go to a certain amount of time. You can only jump so high. You can only lift so much weight. Your brain can only take so many decisions before you start to see repercussions.
Okay, and that's because there's a buildup of synaptic waste in the brain.
Yeah, I mean, the leading theory right now, which I certainly prescribe to, is that these synapses, so the connection between our neurons, just become overused, and the fidelity or the integrity of those connections begins to decline. And that's through a buildup of likely synaptic waste, leftover neurotransmitter that's not being cleared away, and the synapses don't have time to reset before a new decision is hitting us. I mean, we love this stat, and if it's true, it's mind-blowing that decades ago we were making hundreds of decisions. Now we're making 35,000, right? It's just incredible, the number of decisions that we're required to make right now.
Every day. Just to qualify that, 35. The average person is making 35,000 decisions a day.
It's wild. And to your point, Tom, one reflection that I had in my own life is I was a guy who, would wake up and I scroll social, right? I'll go through Reddit, and there's probably hundreds of my good decisions that are being lost and I'm giving to social media, right?
Yes.
So it's something that we'd let slip, and the changes are so dramatic, right? It's only the last 5-10 years that the big changes started to happen from short form content and things like that and socials, that I think it caught a lot of us unaware.
35,000 decisions. That's extraordinary.
Crazy. I bet you some days you will be making more than that, even all the minor decisions, major decisions. Or what's interesting about it is the emotional connection or engagement or the stress and anxiety you have can affect how fast you suffer from decision fatigue. So maybe some days in your position, you're only making 5,000 decisions, but the degree of stress and anxiety around those decisions may be incredibly high, right? Because a yay or nay to a sale, that's a big decision from a legal counsel, right? So someone like you probably suffers from it more rapidly with high stakes decisions.
But I've massively benefited from just taking that time out, just in terms of my ability to focus. But I think people have seen it in me as well. For a while, I still do, professional coaching as well. I'm not a coach; I am coached. And it's something that my firm is very keen to push on people when they think that they might need it or whatever. And it was incredibly powerful, and it made me really sit up and think. And it's given me a really different outlook on things. But this walk and this MacRitchie challenge, as well as giving me the fun, the excitement of new people, the ability to come and talk to you guys about stuff that I would never have dreamed of talking about previously, has given me so much. But it also just allows you to really focus on life, and it's been fabulous, really.
What's incredible to me is that not necessarily knowing about decision fatigue and the condition, you've done something so good in your life to prevent it, or to prevent the curb of it or the onset of it, and to build kind of some resilience against it as well to a certain point. You've created a habit, so you're actually making fewer decisions in the morning because you've kind of created this habit and you're on autopilot.
Yeah.
You're off your phone for the first 2 hours of the day, so you're saving like your best decisions. And you're thinking about decisions, right? You're thinking about where you're needed throughout the day. You're not just getting stuck straight into the day and attacking everything as it comes.
Yeah.
There's more kind of mindfulness that's happening around it. And then, of course, all the good things like being out in nature and exercising and connecting with other people and having a really meaningful experience. I'm sure all of that will contribute as well.
One of the things that when I was a baby lawyer back in London years and years ago.
That's the official term.
The baby lawyer, yeah. I remember doing a lot of work for one particular very large client that I did. I jumped on secondment to them, and I remember one of the lawyers instructing us from that company said, I'm on my weekend. I don't want to receive any emails from people. And I remember I did send a few, because we were in the middle of a deal, and I remember the partner in charge of me, who's a good friend of mine, I haven't seen him for a while, but the partner in charge of the deal said to me, that client emailed me over the weekend. He doesn't want to email me. And he said, could you ask Tom not to be sending emails at the weekend? Because I did say that. I felt embarrassed. I felt, oh gosh, I felt like I'd let the side down. I was young, I didn't know what I was doing, but at the same time, this was when we had BlackBerries, and it was the first time that these things came out. It was all really exciting because we all had a BlackBerry that looked like a brick or whatever. But it's something that I've always tried to deal with. And I don't always succeed. I do send too many emails out of hours and stuff. But we as a firm, and this isn't about Stephenson Harwood, but we as a firm are very keen to make sure that people don't do things out of hours where necessary, unless necessary. But that was a real learning curve for me where I felt a little bit embarrassed about it. But I was told we don't do things outside hours. It's incredibly important to have that downtime for yourself as well, so that you can sit back, relax, contemplate and think about your day, your decisions, what's going to happen in the future. Because if you don't do that, things start to go out of place, right?
So I'd like to talk about your Dementia Singapore and what was the decision for supporting that cause?
So it was a bit, as with all of this stuff with MacRitchie Challenge, it was a bit organic. Nothing was planned and nothing continues to be planned, although I have to do quite a lot more planning now with the numbers that have gone on. As a result, I mentioned that we have some cases of it in the family, and as a result of seeing one particular family member, I was really shocked. I didn't know anything about dementia at all. I actually, when I started this whole thing, I thought, right, Mike, the client, you give me that money, and I'll just give it to the firm's charity of the year in Singapore. So I spoke to our lady in charge of charities, the office manager, and said, who is our charity of the year? And she said, actually, we've just come to the end of a cycle, 2-year cycle, so we don't have one, we're just tendering for tomorrow. So I thought, well, actually, that's a perfect opportunity for me to do something for dementia, having seen and been shocked by where things stood. So I wrote to Dementia Singapore in sort of typical fashion. They needed to check that I was sort of fit and proper to do something for them. I said, look, I don't know what I want to do, but I want to try to do something which will be effective and beneficial to Dementia Singapore, whether that be by way of fundraising, whether it be by way of awareness. But I'll try to make money and make people get to know a bit more about you. And they said, well, okay. And so I apparently passed their fit and proper test, and they sent me a Just Giving web link, which is for donations. And it all just went from there. And I've got closer and closer now to the people who are on the board at Dementia and the people who work in the care homes here, the New Horizon care homes. They're wonderful people, and they work tirelessly for helping growing understanding of dementia, Alzheimer's and the like here in Singapore. Now, they're no different from the people who are doing it in Canada or in the UK or in Australia or the States. But it's an amazing team here that work with it. And I now sit on the fundraising committee and board as well, which I'm very proud of. And so that's all just come about as a result of just doing my thing, really. But I've learned a lot more about dementia. I've learned a lot more about causes for it, the slim ability to be able to to hinder its rise, to stop the sort of slow down and decline. I'm very proud of the fact that I have got so close to it. I don't know everything about it. I get to meet lots of people as a result of it who know a lot more about it, and there are some amazing people here in Singapore, doctors, scientists, researchers, who are doing a lot of work, really good work, in terms of analysing and researching how dementia comes, ways of prohibiting it so far as possible, connections between oral hearing and going deaf, particularly, and dementia. There's a particular lady called Dr. Rebecca Harwood, who's excellent, doing some great research into that, and I've met her through this. So really, really great. She's somebody you should have on your podcast.
No, that's wonderful. And I think the cause, what you touched on earlier, just awareness, because there's Alzheimer's or Dementia Canada and whatnot, but to make it culturally aware in Singapore is very, very important. Because in Asia at large, there's certainly still a stigma related to the condition. We do a ton of work in the spaces as well, and just making people understand the condition more is just such a big first barrier. Because you want to get those people interested in knowing before they can talk to the researchers and go to those centers and whatnot. So I think just the awareness you guys are building around the condition and talking freely about it is a wonderful cause in and of itself.
The thing about dementia is it's not just an affliction, or that's not the right word, but it's not just an illness which affects the person themselves. It affects the family. It affects husbands, wives, spouses, whatever it may be, family members. You have a primary, secondary carer. So for every one person that may have dementia or form of onset dementia, there are usually 3-4 more people who are also directly affected by it. And that's one of the things that Dementia Singapore does very well as well. They have a number of sort of programs for training people who are going to be looking after people living with dementia.
Mm-hmm. No, it's great. That's one of the big changes of the last number of years. We were so focused on care of the afflicted individual, which obviously is important. But you're absolutely right. The repercussions for a family are immense. Living with someone with that condition can be a very difficult burden that the family has to take on, especially here in Asia with how the familial ties are so strong. It's wonderful the cause and what they're doing. Absolutely.
If decision fatigue, we've got this kind of buildup of synaptic waste in the brain that's happening every day. We go to bed at night, it's a good night's sleep, the brain resets. But this is a new condition. This condition's only been 10, 20 years, and it's due to the life that we're leading, this technology that will, all the technology, the content, the busyness, everything that we're consuming is, these 35,000 decisions a day sometimes aren't in our control. If that's what's happening to our brain, if decision fatigue is happening to our brain on a daily basis, could this be the cause of dementia in the future? What's the impact of the lives that we're leading now?
Mm-hmm. No, it's a great question, and the reality is we don't know, and our brain is putting an incredible amount of stress with all these decisions. If you talk to people, they don't feel like they feel overwhelmed. That sense of anxiety and overwhelm. This is even young people, right? Yep. The sense of how they feel about the world and what's happening. They feel incredibly overwhelmed. Physiologically, is there long-term repercussions of decision fatigue if it's hitting the synapses the way we think it is? I mean, probably, likely, in my opinion. We don't know the answer to that, but I don't see how there wouldn't be some type of long-term consequence.
I was just going to, if I could interrupt quickly,
of course,
one of the really interesting things to have come about in the last few years is the rise in early stage, so people at a younger age developing dementia, forms of dementia, Alzheimer's. And it's written about and researched an awful lot. I'm not an expert in it, but it is extraordinary. And the link, I think, between social media and continual use of tablets and iPhones and whatever it might be is certainly one of the triggers, or one of the causes.
Yeah, absolutely. I doubt it's going to be the only, so dementia means so many different things, right? There's so many different conditions that fall under the guise of dementia, but things like this earlier onset, if we're detecting it earlier, or if actually it's happening earlier. Because there's a strong connection, of course, between psychology and physiology, right? So even, people who are isolated and alone, the risk of them getting some type of dementia is much, much higher, right? And so there's a strong connection between psychology and how we're living and the health of our brain. And I think decision fatigue ultimately is an unhealthy condition, just because it's not how the brain was made or designed to operate. So yeah, I think long-term connections to dementia or some type of cognitive disablement long-term will be shown through research. But I've spoken about it before. What really concerns me having young kids is how it affects a developing brain. So if you have like a 6-year-old making 35,000 decisions a day, what's happening? And the concern for that, for me, is there's this process, we call it, synaptic pruning, where your brain, synapses are very, very expensive, or energetically they're very pricey to maintain. So your brain will actually reduce the number of synapses to make the most optimal, efficient system it can. Now, if we are artificially providing, a high degree of stress on these synapses through things like decision fatigue, how will it affect that young brain? And by young, I mean our brain's not done developing by the time we're 21, 24. So it's actually all the way into through our teens and young adult years. So that's kind of a scary concept for me, is those longer term issues. And maybe in addition, there's not just decision fatigue, we have things like COVID and all these other pressures. I mean, how many black swans events have we had?
Yeah.
Once in a generation events that seem to happen once every few years here. Is there's just a lot happening in the world that it's not just about more decisions, it's just general increase in anxiety and stress that I think most people are feeling.
Just on the pruning thing, because I've been learning a little bit about this recently.
Good.
If children are taking on more information, more decisions, will the brain prune, or will it keep the extra neurons? Is it neurons? Am I right in saying that?
Connections. Yeah. So, no, I mean, that's one of the reasons why we're, stuff you learn, it's so easy to learn when you're younger, is because your brain is so plastic. You're able to form connections so readily, and your brain can form new synapses for everything, language, music, and all these different things. The more you use a synapse, generally speaking, the stronger it becomes. Okay, so those connections develop and they can support more signals, more throughput of information, and they will last longer. Those synapses won't kind of be pruned. So if you learn a language, and I forget the years, it changes quite often, but I think now it's age 5 or age 7. If you've learned a language up until a certain period of time, call it age 7, you can maintain a lot of that knowledge for life, right? So those synapses clearly aren't being pruned because the connection was so strong. So I'm a firm believer, even for my own kids, though, it's about variety as well. So trying to get them to play every sport, play instruments, learn languages, just trying to make as many connections everywhere as possible, because the brain can so readily do it. Yeah. So the goal as a parent is to get those connections as firmed up as we can as the child develops.
Just also coming back to dementia as well, things like going for walks, being out in nature, talking, creating community, having connections with other people, can they help with dementia or symptoms of dementia?
Yeah, usually we talk about risk, right? So stuff like that's more risk, and you'll talk to different research and they'll say different things. Exercise, great, lowers your risk. My perspective, probably the biggest benefit is those social engagements. I'm a big believer, humans are social creatures. So actually you going out and building this community, your tribe, personally, I would say that would probably be one of the biggest benefits to lower risk of dementia later in life. There's evidence towards that, certainly. And I think in the world, we become more isolated and more isolated every day. So I think getting out and doing that is probably a huge benefit.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, one of the major reasons, there's so many reasons, one of the major reasons that I got a bit lonely, as I said at the very beginning. Mm-hmm. And to be able to do this has given me... what's also interesting is of those 1,233 people that have done this with me, the number of new people to have done it is sort of going forward is extraordinary. And also the difference in types of people. So it started with just sort of my friends and connections, but now it's developed very much every time. It's new people, and I'm getting to meet new people I've never met in the last 10 years or 13 years I've lived in Singapore. It's been great. Really great for that reason, yeah.
I think we had a wonderful conversation with a gentleman named Sharad Lal earlier too, on this podcast, because I think he would have been great to have on here too, because what you're referring to a bit is like purpose, right? I think so often in life we mistake purpose with vocation, right? So like, I'm a lawyer, I'm a neuroscientist. That's not a purpose, that's a job. So it sounds like a little bit of, you got a little bit of purpose with this whole process that's outside of everything else that your day to day.
Absolutely. This is not about work. This is not about, it's about, about purpose completely.
Tom, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for talking to us. Is there anything else you wanted to cover?
No, it's super inspiring, and I love the trajectory and the decisions you've made. I think it's a wonderful example of making decisions count.
Well, I'm really very grateful for the opportunity to speak to you, and I think what you're doing is brilliant. I'm going to be looking for it a lot over the next few years, and I'm looking forward to being in touch more. But thank you so much. And Michelle has been once before on the MacRitchie Challenge Loop.
I will be, yeah.
And you're going to be coming out very shortly too.
Would love to. I got to see how many snakes I see.
Absolutely.
I didn't get to see any snakes, so I've got to come back. But I did see a...
Colugo.
I showed you the pictures.
You did.
Yeah. Amazing. So just to close off, we'd like to ask one question. What's been the hardest decision or the most difficult decision you've ever had to make, and why?
Very, very difficult question to answer. There are many difficult decisions.
Sorry, I should have prepped you on this.
No,
one.
it's all right. There are many difficult decisions I have to make. I think, and there's so many at the moment as well that are going around thinking about things. I think probably being apart from my children is the key one, and to a degree it's enforced. I have to because of work and everything else, but I'm doing my very best to make sure that I'm there for them as much as I possibly can be. But it's a decision which is not necessarily all in my due to what for my reasons, but it's a difficult one to have to deal with.
Yeah, and it's an ongoing one.
Yes,
as well.
Indeed.
So it's not just one big decision that gets made and that door's closed. It's ongoing.
Yeah. Can I give me some time on that one? That's quite hard though.
Sorry.
That was a beautiful answer. Yeah.
Really, thank you so much for coming in and talking
awesome.
to us today. It's been great.
Thank you. Thank you very much and good luck.
Really inspiring.
So everybody watching here today, I hope you found this conversation as inspiring as we did. And I guess remember, every decision that you make, even small ones, can just have a ripple effect that can change not just your life, but a lot of lives. So thank you so much for listening, and we'll leave contact information for MacRitchie Challenge so you can have a look at it yourself, and of course a link to Tom too.
And don't forget to subscribe to Decisions That Count on your favourite podcast platform and leave us a review. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this episode and any takeaways you'll be applying to your own life. Thank you so much, and until next time, make every decision count.